Here's what the conversion ecosystem does. It takes every piece of your marketing, your website, your content, your ads, your emails, your sales calls, and connects them into one system that moves a buyer from never having heard you to choosing you. And that's the whole job. No more traffic for its own sake, no more content for its own sake. One connected path a buyer can actually walk from being seen to believing you to choosing you. Everything I'm about to show you exists to do that job and only that job. Before I show you the parts, I want to show you why it has to be built this way, because the shape of the whole system comes directly from how a buyer actually decides. Starting with the buyer, a rough rule of thumb from buying behavior research says a person needs about 7 hours of exposure to you across 11 separate touch points spread over 4 different platforms before they trust you enough to buy. That's not one blog post. That's not one ad that they click. That's hours of accumulated exposure across dozens of separate moments showing up in several different places. This is called the 7-11-4 rule, and it's the reason a single tactic could never be enough. One channel, no matter how good, can't deliver 7 hours across 11 touches on 4 different platforms. Now add the second piece. Buyers don't move towards a decision in a straight line. Instead, they loop. They notice you, they leave. They compare you to someone else, then they come back. They read a review, then they forget about you for 2 weeks, then a friend mentions you, and then they're back again. Researchers call this the messy middle, the stretch between a buyer first noticing a problem and actually deciding to buy. And it's exactly what the name says, messy, non-linear, a loop between exploring options and evaluating them, with no fixed order and no fixed path. So you have a buyer who needs a large accumulated amount of trust-building exposure and who loops back and forth unpredictably while building it. A single landing page can't catch that. A single ad can't catch that as well. You need to be present wherever the loop takes them, consistently until the exposure adds up. And that's the actual reason the conversion ecosystem exists. It is coverage for a buying process that is longer and messier than most businesses plan for. Because of that, every buyer who ends up choosing you passes through the same 3 layers. They see you, they believe you, they choose you. The conversion ecosystem has 1 layer built for each job. The attention layer gets you seen. This is where a buyer first notices you exist, through content, search, social, and outbound. Nothing else works until this layer puts you in front of someone. The trust layer gets you believed. This is where a buyer loops through the messy middle, comparing you, checking you out, coming back, going quiet, coming back again, and slowly building the exposure the 7-11-4 rule requires. Most of the real decisions get made here quietly before a buyer ever contacts you. Then the conversion layer. This gets you chosen. This is where a buyer who's already decided in their own head finally acts on it through a landing page, a booking flow, or a sales conversation. This layer does not create the decision. It captures one that was already formed in the layers before it. Here's the part that most businesses get wrong. The 3 layers are not options to pick from. They are steps that must be done in order, and skipping one breaks the whole thing. You can't skip attention and go straight to trust because there's no one there yet that will trust you. You can't skip trust and go straight to conversion because a stranger who hasn't believed in you will not buy because you asked. Every layer only works because the layer before it feeds it. Attention feeds trust, trust feeds conversion. Break that order and the system doesn't slow down, it stops. This is why running ads straight to a sales page with no attention layer and no trust layer underneath it so often fails even with a good product. The order isn't a suggestion, it's part of the mechanism. Before any of these 3 layers can do their job, one thing has to be already in place under all of it. And that's your foundation, your messaging, your positioning, your website structure, and your conversion paths. It's not a layer and it's not a level. It's the base that everything sits on. If your messaging is unclear, your attention layer brings in the wrong people. If your position is weak, your trust layer has nothing convincing to build belief around. If your website structure is confusing, your conversion layer has no clean path for a ready buyer to act on. The foundation does not do any one job on its own. It makes every other job possible. That's why it gets built first. And rushing past it is the mistake that shows up everywhere else later on, usually disguised in a completely different problem. Inside those 3 layers sit 6 levels, the actual systems that you need to build. Each level has a number and a name. Level 1 is the attention system. It creates consistent visibility, a steady flow of the right people discovering you through content, search, social, and outbound. The job here is consistency, not complexity. One burst of visibility followed by silence doesn't work. A steady flow does. Level 2 is the capture system. It turns an unknown visitor into a known lead through landing pages, lead magnets, forms, and qualification. This is where your system becomes measurable because before you had visitors and after you have contacts that you can actually follow up with. Level 3 is a nurture system. It builds trust over time through email, SMS, CRM workflows, and segmentation. This is the level where most businesses lose the majority of their leads because a captured lead who's not ready yet goes cold without a structured follow-up. The nurture system is what keeps them warm throughout the entire messy middle until the timing finally turns. Level 4 is the authority system. It builds credibility through SEO, AEO, educational content, case studies, and proof. So a buyer trusts you before they ever pick up the phone. This is where you become the obvious, credible choice instead of just another name that they found. Level 5 is a long form system. It speeds up belief through video, webinars, and deep dive content. The kind that lets a buyer understand your approach in one sitting instead of piecing it together over months. It compresses the time the 7-11-4 rule normally takes. Level 6 is the scale system, and it gets its own explanation because it behaves differently than the other 5. Scale works through paid advertising, retargeting, and budget optimization, pouring money and reach into whatever is already happening underneath it. Here is the part to understand clearly. Scale does not create result. It multiplies what's already there, and it does it whether it's good or bad. If you point paid reach at a system where attention, capture, nurture, authority, and long form are already working, the scale multiplies a machine that already converts. If you point the same paid reach at a system where those levels are broken or missing, the scale multiplies and leaks instead. Faster traffic hitting a broken system just means faster losses and a bigger ad bill. Scale has no judgment on its own. It only turns up the volume on whatever it's connected to. That's why scale sits last. It's not a reward for finishing the other 5 levels, it's a rule. You earn the right to scale once everything underneath it is stable, because scaling a broken system doesn't fix it. It just breaks it faster and more expensively. Beyond the 6 levels sit the 2 loops, and without them, every sale is an endpoint, and you start over from 0 on the next one. The reactivation loop brings back leads who didn't convert the first time. Remember the messy middle? Many of those leads are not lost, they're just simply early. And the reactivation path re-engages them until their timing finally turns, instead of letting them go as a cold lead forever. The amplification loop turns a satisfied customer into a source of new business through referrals, testimonials, and word of mouth. A happy customer is the warmest attention there is, and this loop feeds the attention straight back into the ecosystem. Together, these 2 loops are what stop the system from resetting after every sale. Non-converters come back through reactivation, and customers generate new attention through amplification. This is what turns a straight climb into an actual ecosystem, one that regenerates its own fuel instead of needing to be refilled from scratch every single time. Here is everything in one pass. Buyer needs roughly 7 hours of exposure across 11 touch points on 4 platforms before they trust you. And they get there through a messy, looping middle, not a straight line. And that's why the conversion ecosystem exists. Every buyer passes through 3 layers in order. Attention gets you seen, trust gets you believed, conversion gets you chosen. Skip the order and the system breaks. Underneath those 3 layers sits the foundation: your messaging, your positioning, website, and conversion paths. This is the base that everything depends on. Inside those layers, you'll find 6 levels which you build one at a time: attention, capture, nurture, authority, long form, and scale. Scale sits last on purpose because it multiplies whatever's already there, good or bad. So it only belongs on top of a system that already works. And the 2 loops keep the whole thing regenerating itself. Reactivation brings back leads who are not ready yet. Amplification turns happy customers into new attention. That's the entire ecosystem. The 7-11-4 rule and the messy middle explain why it has to exist. 3 layers taken in order, a foundation underneath them, 6 levels built one at a time, and 2 loops that keep feeding itself. Now that you have the entire framework, you could watch any other video on this channel and get a deeper understanding of how things work. This video gave you the shape of the system. The next video covering the foundation is the right place to start next because everything else depends on it. Remember, the most visible, the most valuable, the most trusted business in your market wins. The whole point of the conversion ecosystem is to build a system that makes you all three.